Council that will forego council reports this evening, if that's okay, just because it's such a full agenda.
Yeah, Earth Day happened, we were all there. AKBLG happened, we were all there. I said that. All there.
Are we on? I'm still taking my little dessert here. It's okay. Where was that? What was it?
Oh.
Okay.
We have this much on the agenda. Holy smokes.
Jesse, could you grab me a Perrier, please? Thank you so much. Are we good? Are we live? Okay. Just gonna make all my noise here and then.
Sorry, just stop.
Okay, welcome everybody. So if I could, this is Tuesday, May the 6th. This is a regular meeting of the City of Nelson. And if I could have a motion to reconvene, moved by Councillor Payne, seconded by Councillor Tate. All those in favor, and that carries. Just for anybody that can't see the little Hollywood squares on the projectors, Councillor Rick Lockenberg is joining us remotely, and the other person that's on the remote, just in case anybody's curious, is Alex Toom, one of our planning team. We are at item 7, but we're gonna go past item 7 and 8 tonight because of the many things that are on our agenda. And we're hopeful that I don't have to at 11 o'clock call for a special action to be able to move the meeting in to go on for a prolonged time. Try to avoid that as much as possible. So we're gonna move right up into item number 10, and that is requests. And the request is for a temporary use permit. Development Services has received a temporary use permit application from Yahoo for the property located at 512 Hendrick Street. The application seeks permission for a cannabis consumption patio and cannabis retailer advertising. Staff has recommended council approve the TUP to allow Yahoo to operate a cannabis consumption patio and allow cannabis retail advertising at 512 Hendrick Street as a pilot project. So Council, you have a big report in front of you with lots of reference to many things. And we have here from staff from our planning department, Ken and Natalie. So I'm gonna turn it over to them just to give us a little bit of info and summary of what's before us.
Thank you, Mayor. So in this presentation this evening, I'm going to start off with an overview of the application that's been submitted. I'll provide a brief summary of the analysis. The detailed analysis is in the report that's before you and also available on the city's website for those in the audience who'd like to have a look at it. So I'll talk briefly about the official community plan, the zoning bylaw, and the clean air and smoking bylaw. I'll also talk a little bit about the public engagement that's happened prior to today. I'll provide a summary of referral comments received from City of Nelson departments as well as external agencies. I'll then dive into the draft temporary use permit conditions, and then I'll end with the recommendation that's before council. So as the mayor had mentioned, there's two components to this application. There's a cannabis consumption patio and cannabis retailer advertising. As you can see on the screen, we've had to create two definitions for these terms. So a cannabis consumption patio means an exterior patio or balcony accessory to a restaurant use, where the smoking, vaping, and consumption of cannabis is permitted, and where advertising of cannabis retailers is also permitted. And then for cannabis retailer advertising, that means signage of various promotional material related to licensed cannabis retailers. So before I get into the details of the OCP and zoning and that sort of thing, just to give you an idea of where the request is coming from. So on the left you have a picture of the patio and balcony where the applicant has requested for a cannabis consumption patio. So if you're standing on the patio, you'd be looking out over Nelson Chrysler to Baker Street and the Co-op. On the left right-hand side would be the entrance to Yaher, which is accessed from the stairs on Hendrick Street. So this application does not include permitting cannabis consumption or cannabis retail in this area. And on the right-hand side, you have various different pictures inside the building, and the application does not include cannabis consumption or cannabis retail advertising within the building. And again, just if for those of you who are more site plan oriented, this shows an area of the proposed cannabis consumption patios. So on the basement level, it's the entirety of the balcony or patio facing Baker Street, as well as a portion of the patio on the main floor, again facing primarily Baker Street with a small portion facing Hendrick Street. I will get into the more details of the temporary use permit conditions, but just to give you some visuals for now, one of the conditions within the temporary use permit is the requirement for screening along the Hendrick Street frontage of the property. So the applicant has proposed a living wall or plants and trees and flowers and that sort of thing during the spring and summer months. And then what they've called a waffle wall during the winter months, obviously when trees aren't growing. So getting into the summary of the analysis, from staff's perspective, this was a relatively quick thing to do. As we've noted, our current official community plan predates the legalization of cannabis, and as such contains no policies specific to cannabis-related land use. Within the zoning bylaw, again, a very short analysis, there was quite a bit of engagement with the community and some amendments to the zoning bylaw back in 2018. And as I'm sure council is aware, that limited cannabis retailers to 3 areas of the city with a cap on the number of retailers in each of those areas. And at that time, that 2018 amendment also prohibited all other cannabis-related land uses. In 2020, the city initiated a rezoning process to allow cannabis microprocessing in certain areas, very similar to what had been done with cannabis retailers. So post 2020, there have been no changes made to the zoning bylaw or to the OCP to reflect any changes that have been coming from the province. And I will note, since 2020, there have been a number of different bulletins and changes from the province, probably too many to list. Typically, the province just posts them on their website and they hope the municipalities become aware of them. So on to the third sort of component, the clean air and smoking bylaw. So the purpose behind this chart here is just to sort of explain to council some ambiguity that's in the current clean air and smoking bylaw. So for the most part, people have an understanding that there's a 7-meter setback generally for most areas when you're smoking either cannabis or cigarettes, which is mostly true, but once you start getting into the details of the way the bylaw is written, it becomes unclear. So one of the reasons why staff had brought this forward for consideration is to sort of show or highlight that, when staff are making recommendations to council, it's not always clear cut. Often we rely on our OCP and our zoning and our bylaw, but in some cases, particularly when it comes to something like the clean air and smoking bylaw, it's not always clear cut. So for example, in one section of the bylaw, it states, no person shall smoke in a park, including within a 7-meter buffer zone surrounding the park. So in the case of this particular application, historically people have referred to that portion of the Hendrick Street Road right-of-way as a park. However, strictly speaking, it's not a park. It hasn't been designated as a park. It hasn't been given to us as part of a subdivision, that sort of thing. So from staff's perspective, we're not strictly sure how to interpret that. So we just kind of wanted to bring that to council's attention. As well, there's another section of the smoking bylaw that states, no person shall smoke in a public municipal open space, including within 7-meter buffer zones surrounding the public municipal open space. And again, there's some ambiguity around the definition of what that means. Strictly speaking, if you were to apply that broadly, it would prohibit smoking of any kind on any municipally owned land. So again, we don't have the benefit of going back to whoever wrote the bylaw of the day. So we have to, again, bring that to council's attention that it's not so clear cut in this particular case, because we're sure that at the time it wasn't the intention of staff and council to broadly prohibit smoking of all kinds everywhere in the city. As well, there's another section of the bylaw that states no person shall smoke in any building, structure, vehicle, or any other place that is fully or substantially enclosed, including 7 meters of an entrance to such building, structure, or other enclosed space. So strictly speaking, when it comes to a bylaw like this, the default is the provincial regulations unless a municipality moves forward with their own bylaw. In this particular case, the provincial regulations have a clear definition of what partially or fully enclosed is. However, in the case of the municipal bylaw, we don't actually have a definition. So we're not sure if the municipal definition or bylaw would take effect in this case, or if we would default back to the provincial rules. And then finally, there's one last section that states these sections of the bylaw that reference a 7-meter separation distance. Within the bylaw, it doesn't actually state whether or not it's a vertical or horizontal distance. I think in many cases, people automatically think of the horizontal, but they don't always necessarily think of, what if someone's smoking on the 3rd floor of a building? That's strictly speaking 7 meters away, but it's more of a horizontal separation distance. So on to the public engagement. So public information session was held by the applicant on February 26th, and staff attended. Approximately 20 people were at that session. Of the people that were in attendance, 18 of 20 supported the application. As well, the applicant did provide a summary of the analysis, a summary of the comments, and provided an analysis of what people had said. As well, there was a public notification in the form of a development notification sign that's been posted on the site since approximately February 14th. There was an ad in the May 1st edition of the Nelson Star, and then notices were sent to property owners and tenants within 60 meters of the property. And as a form of update, because I know in the report that you have before you, you have the numbers as of the 28th. So as of yesterday afternoon, we've received 23 letters, 9 were in support, 13 opposed, and 1 was inconclusive. Again, because staff didn't really have a lot sort of to hang our hat on when it comes to this, we've provided one final bullet here, some benefits and disadvantages that the applicant and members of the public have provided to us. So we wanted to bring that forward to council to make you aware of sort of a general idea of what the public is thinking. So on the benefits side of things, there's the ability to regulate a new land use through the use of a temporary use permit and the conditions that are associated with that, rather than if the applicant were to apply for a rezoning, which would make the land use permanent. There's also, applicant has also identified the potential increase in tourism to Nelson due to the unique nature of the business. And on that point, I will say that staff have done some research and we were not able to come across any other municipality in the province that has had this sort of application presented to them before. So we would say that there is a potential uniqueness to this. As well, there's support for existing Nelson-based businesses, including the local cannabis retailers that would have advertisements within the cannabis consumption patio. On the disadvantages, the members of the public have stated there's a potential increase in ambient noise and smoke from the patio, as well as a potential increase in loitering, litter, and crime surrounding business. So summary of referral comments. We don't have a lot here, but we did want to highlight for council that we did reach out to internal city departments as well as external agencies to try and get some answers around this application. So as you can see, we referred to Nelson Police, Nelson Fire, Bylaw Services, as well as Interior Health, and 2 sections of the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. So the police did respond and they said that they had no concerns with the application as it was presented. With Nelson Fire, we did receive comments. In the case of Bylaw Services, we received comments regarding how the business is potentially going to comply and mitigate measures within the Clean Air and Smoking Bylaw. However, they did also identify that ambiguity that I talked about previously, where it's not quite clear-cut exactly what the bylaw is saying. As well, bylaw also stated that there's regulations within the zoning bylaw that state that no property shall discharge or emit odorous, toxic, or noxious matters or vapors across lot lines. For Interior Health, they stated that their jurisdiction is primarily related to tobacco and cannabis products. And anything else that's not a controlled substance. They also provided some health information, and when I get into the TUP conditions, you will see a condition in there around the applicant being required to have safeguards and health safeguards in place. With the Cannabis Regulation Branch, the Policy and Communications Department referred us back to the bulletin that now allows cannabis consumption on patios, provided the applicant gets approval from the municipality. As well, they also wanted to clarify that the bulletin does not allow indoor lounges or tasting rooms for cannabis consumption. It's strictly what they call hospitality patios, so exterior patios and balconies. On the Cannabis Regulation Branch, on the enforcement section, they stated that they currently have no specific guidelines or authority to regulate cannabis consumption outside of cannabis retailers. So on to the TUP conditions. Before I get into the details of this, I just wanted to sort of reinforce what I'd said previously around the fact that this is a brand new type of application, probably the first one in the province. So when we were crafting these conditions, we wanted to be aware of the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty, and but we also wanted to explore the potential opportunity to regulate cannabis consumption spaces. So I've only included some of the TUP conditions. The other ones are standard conditions that you'd see in a TUP, like the requirement to register the TUP on title and that sort of thing. These ones here are perhaps the ones that are probably more up for discussion and debate at the council table. So condition 2 is the definitions of a cannabis consumption patio, as well as a cannabis retailer advertising that I talked about previously. Next we have condition number 3 that makes the patio accessory to a restaurant use, which means that the cannabis patio and the cannabis retailing can only occur if the applicant is operating a restaurant. If the restaurant closes or they otherwise stop serving food and beverages, the patio would have to stop operating. As well, condition 5, the cannabis consumption patio is limited to those areas that I highlighted previously. Condition number 6, the patio would be restricted to patrons 19 years of age or older. The permitted hours of operation for the patio would be 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. I would also highlight with this particular condition, again, staff didn't have a lot to lean on when it came to hours of operation. Within our current bylaws, we don't regulate the operation of businesses with the exception of drive-through restaurants. So technically speaking, all businesses can open 24 hours a day if they wanted to. So we worked with the applicant to come up with what we thought were reasonable hours, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., which is roughly what the average cafe or restaurant that's serving liquor could be open, perhaps a little bit longer, but we wanted to also recognize that this particular development is in a partial residential neighborhood, so the applicant did agree to reduce the hours over what they had initially asked for. As well, there's a requirement for signage on the patio that would notify patrons that there's no smoking, no vaping, and no cannabis consumption beyond this point, i.e. once you go outside of that yellow area that had been highlighted in the previous slide, once they've gone beyond that point, they're contravening that particular TUP condition. As well, condition number 9, as I mentioned before, Interior Health did provide some health information, and one of the things that they had recommended is a condition around the applicant being required to provide disposable mouthpieces to patrons who wish to share cannabis consumption devices. Condition 10 is the screening that I had mentioned previously along the Hendricks Street frontage. So again, there would be the waffle wall in the winter and then the flower wall or tree wall in the spring and summer months. And as well, this is somewhat of a regular condition that we put in TUPs, but we wanted to sort of strengthen the wording in this because we didn't necessarily have certainty around whether or not there's compliance with WorkSafe BC, Interior Health, and the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. So we put in condition 11 that says the applicant must comply with all applicable provincial and federal legislation and regulations. So if there's a situation where we become aware of the fact that the applicant is not complying with WorkSafe BC requirements or the Cannabis Regulation Branch, they would be notified and they would have to cease operation until they bring themselves into compliance with whoever the regulatory authority is. And that should actually say the resolution or recommendation. So as I had mentioned, the recommendations before council is that they approve the temporary use permit to allow the applicant to operate a cannabis consumption patio and to allow cannabis retailer advertising in the existing building at 512 Hendricks Street. Thanks.
Thank you. So, council, we have before you a recommendation or options before you. If somebody wanted to move a recommendation or an option, that would be great, so we could start some discussion. Or would you prefer to have some discussion before you move up?
I have a question, please.
Sure.
In our agenda package, there are some drawings, and I was not able to read on those drawings the distance from the patios to the sidewalk. I measured them at home and I tried again here. Are you able to decipher that for me? About how far is it from the edge of the patio to the sidewalk?
From the railing?
Sure, yeah.
We would say it's probably in the neighborhood of a meter to 2 meters.
That's what I got as well.
So, if you were to strictly apply the 7-meter radius, it would essentially not be permitted, with the exception of a small area maybe on the basement level.
Okay, thanks for confirming that.
Thank you. So Woodward,
I'd like just to know that the proponent already has a business license, is that correct?
That is correct, to operate a restaurant.
So they could operate a restaurant anytime?
That is correct, yeah. With the exception of drive-through restaurants, any business can operate 24 hours a day if they wanted to.
Regardless of this particular,
Exactly.
thank you.
Councillor Payne.
One of the suggestions, and thank you so much to everyone who wrote in and let us know your opinion. I just love that feedback from our community when people are engaged, so very exciting. One of the things that I read in one of those letters was, I think a temporary use permit is normally 3 years, but is there any way that we could change that to allow the community to be more comfortable around this, or some sort of assessment in the interim? Because I'm trying to remember back, the only other temporary use permit that I think has come before council while I've been here, it may have been before, was when the Nelson Brewing Company went to have their tasting room. But in that case, I think there was significant construction that they needed to do. So the 3 years sort of made sense to me. Whereas my feeling now, other than the screening, is that it's gonna be happening within a similar footprint. And again, it's not totally clear from that, but that is one thought I had and a question that I have to you.
For sure, so within the Local Government Act, it only states a maximum of 3 years. There's no minimum, and again, and I might sound like a broken record, but with this particular application, because it's so new, we don't have any precedents. Typically we would contact other municipalities and say, what have you done? But there's no other municipalities in this case. So we recognize 3 years might not be ideal, but typically when we get a temporary use permit, the default is just 3 years. Simply because within the Local Government Act, they can apply for up to 3 years and they can only apply for one renewal. So up to 3 years. So if you were to implement a 1 year permit in this case, they could apply for another 3 years. So instead of getting their maximum potential 6 years, they would only get 4 years if they applied for a renewal.
An example, I just want to bring an example for it, is that in the City of Trail, they gave their supportive housing 1 year TUP. So less than 3 years does exist. The maximum potential is 6, but it's not 1 year at a time. It's like,
So can I just follow up from that? So my thought process around, and maybe I'm mistaken, a temporary use permit is you try it on to see if it fits. If it fits at that point in time, you can do a zoning change or So it's not necessarily to maximize just that 6 years. I don't know where Nelson Brewing Company is in their temporary use permit, but so the idea for me is to try it out, and maybe 1 year would be more comfortable for us to have a better understanding of what it looks like. I'm not sure, again, what the objections are.
okay, Councillor Lockberg, I'm gonna go to you just because you have your hand up and I'm gonna miss you.
I was gonna move to deny the temporary use permit.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to deny. Is there a seconder of the motion? Councillor Tate. So as the proponent, did you want to say anything further, Councillor Lockberg?
Yes,
Okay,
I do.
you moved it, you get to go first.
So I'm not opposed to this in principle. Like, there are many great locations in this city. I don't think this is a good location. I think the evidence is the number of emails we had from neighbors and residents in the area. I think smoking cannabis is quite different from even smoking cigarettes. The smell, the is so strong. And many people, it's a especially the people in the neighborhood. I think they have a right to sort of clean air, and it's the same as like sound and everything else. So that's one thing. The second thing is there's many ways to ingest cannabis. Smoking, like burning and smoking cannabis, is just one. So it's not like we're even not permitting the use of cannabis. There's lots of ways to consume it. Many of them are quite a bit healthier too, to be honest. Um, so, like I said, I'm not opposed to this in other locations. I think this location is really problematic. There's kids in the neighborhood. That area has gone through a lot. That neighborhood's gone through a lot, and I think based on the feedback of the residents, they'd like a break from any more activity like this.
Thank you, Councillor Lockwood. Any further Councillor Tate?
Yes, thanks so much. Thank you for the giant report, by the way. I Googled and I did find that Penticton has a patio opening, but I don't know whether it went through municipal processes. I did find one article on Global, but it's quite recent. It's from April. So I would be really curious to see what are the differences, what does that look like? From my perspective, I love that Nelson is first in so many things. I really love that we're innovative and try new things. I think that without any best practices, we're putting ourselves in a really tight spot. And I don't want to be first in building these best practices. I don't think that's a place or a risk that I want to take at this time, particularly with our really delicate downtown that's had a couple of really tough summers in a row. So for that reason, at this time, I would like to see this play out in other jurisdictions where we can get a bit more information and try to navigate the potential problems using other people's data first. Are you able to find it? Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Further, Councillor Payne?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting comment around being first, because the way I see this is just a continuation of our heritage as a community that's been highly supportive of this industry in general. I mean, the original Holy Smoke, from what I understand, was in that location, so it's not really new to the neighborhood. I do think it's interesting when you are residentially living close to a commercial zone, but it's the choice that the individuals there have made. It's not necessarily a surprise. And as far as the smoking regulations, I hear Councillor Lochinberg talk about the difference between tobacco smoke and cannabis smoke, but we've come just the opposite way. You used to be able to smoke everywhere, all the time, in restaurants, on planes, and this is a legal activity. The challenge that I had with some of the letters that came in was the assumption that all users of cannabis are, how am I gonna say this, disreputable individuals. This is a legal activity that many people throughout the socioeconomic spectrum utilize in various different ways. And the fact that there are no places, so if you're a renter, or, and I think there was a whole list of individuals who don't really have a place where they can go and have a casual social experience, that's why I do believe it's worth trying for 1 year. I don't think it's going to attract an unsavory group of individuals. It's in the downtown core. I do want to be sensitive to the neighbors, but what other area are we going to find where this is going to be more acceptable? Restaurant with smoking. So that was the feeling that I had from many of the letters, was that there was something inherently wrong with individuals who were using that product. We don't do that around drinking and alcohol, which often gets much more, from my conversation with the previous chief of police here in Nelson, much more loud and aggressive than many cannabis options.
I'm just gonna go, cause somewhere in here I get to have cause I have a question.
Yeah, it was covered.
There was this, I'm gonna hold this up and it's gonna completely disappear. This is in the report with this,
Do you have that you could put up for us?
the red thing,
You have it.
the red thing that says,
The red thing, but
the red thing that says,
Page 18 of your PDF, that's part of
I'm never
the.
gonna get it back again now.
Is there anything the gallery can see
Do you want me to put the,
if we're discussing it?
Yeah, it's
I
page
think it's fair
18.
for people in the gallery.
This is what you want?
Yeah, so page
The
18,
agenda. Yeah.
it says, the map graphic illustrates that without any exception, nearly all private properties in the downtown C1 zone cannot allow cannabis consumption spaces. And I'm assuming that the green spot on there is the property in,
No, that's the
Yes.
IOD part.
So as a point of clarification, that's part of the applicant's application. And the intention behind that is for them to illustrate that if you were to apply that 7-meter radius across the downtown, there'd be, for the most part, with the exception of some interior parts of some buildings, there'd really be nowhere to smoke cigarettes or cannabis unless you stood on the center line of the street. Staff have looked at that and we generally are in agreement. Again, the ambiguity around the clean air and smoking bylaw, I don't know if it's actually being enforced to that extent, but we just wanted to highlight that that's the part of the applicant's application.
right, so just to further, thank you for explaining that, because I couldn't for the life of me figure out what that was there for. That I agree with denying the temporary use permit, and I agree for the reasons that Councillor Lockenberg has stated, and also the reasons that Councillor Tate has stated in terms of the fact that smoking, I can't, like, I'm curious as to why you have to smoke it. Now, I don't think that people that smoke cannabis are some kind of less than quality people, because I think if I was to ask for hands up who's ever smoked a joint, I would probably be the only person in the room that hasn't, because I have actually never ever engaged in the use of cannabis. But I would probably guess, and I know full well that a number of my councillors around the table have, because I know that. So, and I think that these are all upstanding and decent people, so I think that argument, it doesn't really hold for me. The other thing that doesn't hold for me is the comparison to alcohol, and one of the things I struggle with is the fact that I'm very sober curious as an individual, but I can go into a bar and I can sit and have a glass of water and I can leave the bar and I will have no effect of having sat next to a person that was drinking a beer. So I always struggle with this comparison. Well, you can drink and be rowdy and you can do all these other things, but we've just decided that people that smoke cannabis don't get rowdy or anything. So, but it's just that concept of it has an overflow effect, cannabis. I think that people have a right to clean air. I think one of the things that I worry about here is the potential litigation. Because what I'm hearing clearly is based on the fact that there is all these ambiguities in bylaws, provincial ones, federal ones. Healthcare just somehow abdicated any comments about what the effects of cannabis might be. Now falls to the city to be the regulator. And I'm not too sure that I want to take on that job as regulator in terms of interpreting the ambiguity of all of these other bylaws, because they will be nothing but complaint driven. They come back to the city. And I worry about nuisance, because if you sort of define what nuisance means is that, and around litigation, is that Individuals can be concerned about both private and public nuisance. Private nuisance being the inability of me to enjoy my private property, and public nuisance is my inability to walk in public areas. And I have great concern about the staircase that is highly used, and the fact that we've already had many letters of people who, during other activities in that area, had concerns about continuing to use that walkway. We are a council that promotes active transportation, and we want people out walking and using our staircases and things. And so I have a number of concerns, and I really do need to, as Councillor Tate said, see this happen in other jurisdictions before we get another gold star for being first in Nelson again. So my vote, regardless of how this motion goes, will be, in this case, it's for the motion that's on the floor. If it changes, it'll be against. So thank you. And I'm over to Councillor Page. I believe you're next.
Yeah, I have a few questions and comments, and thanks for that. I'm on the fence, for sure. I like the idea of limiting. I do for consideration. I worry about the fragile piece that's kind of been attained at the end of Baker Street currently, and how we keep doing that. I heard from you and through the report, the liquor licensing authority doesn't necessarily do enforcement on the cannabis side. And so my biggest concern is how we deal with people in the park smoking versus people on the patio smoking versus how even the proponent would manage that situation. Butts and things getting inflicted to Nelson Chrysler. How would that be envisioned? How would we manage that? Would that be every time there's some smoke or some noxious fumes or some activity, the neighbors call it in, our bylaw goes over there, they ticket, the proponent wears those tickets? Do we evaluate over a course of that TUP what's coming in and potentially rescind? Do we have a trigger there?
For
Do we
sure.
need to put a trigger in there?
So one of the things that we had not mentioned specifically in the referrals, because it wasn't strictly a referral, but we did reach out to our legal counsel to get an opinion on that sort of exact question, and their response was that a TUP would be treated just like any other bylaw. So if there was a complaint of someone smoking on the Hendrick Street stairs or some other sort of bylaw convention, it would be based on a complaint basis. So people would submit complaints, bylaw would investigate, and with a temporary use permit, we have the ability to stop the use immediately, and we wouldn't need to go back to council for that. It's just simply a matter that would be dealt with internally within development services and with bylaw enforcement. And if for some reason they're contravening one of their conditions, they're temporary use permit. And
So, and just as a thought, so I'm hearing there'd be a lot of power there for complaint driven reports to bylaw to really reduce the proponent and their customers to stay within the defined area. The other thing I don't really hear and see in the report or hear in the explanation is that kind of that idea of vertical venting, and we all know what a hilltop does in the evening as the airs move from the lake uphill, and that makes me worried about how fumes and everything will move up that Hendricks corridor, and how we would even consider managing that on this, because this is very site specific, but.
yeah, staff did think about that. I guess we don't have the knowledge of, I guess it would be the weather patterns, which is the sort of dominant direction of the wind, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we don't know, like, as I had mentioned previously, if we had other options, other municipalities to look at for best practice, we could have maybe learned some stuff. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you, because I think that's kind of outside of our area of expertise.
Just really sensitive to the fringe location of this area, being really close to other residential family homes.
I'll also mention, I think this cannabis consumption patio also allows you to eat or drink cannabis there.
Yeah.
So it'll
Yeah, that's-
it'll
and that's
include
like-
everything, so any use of cannabis, which isn't always smoking, I just wanna kind of put that out there.
Yeah, and that's a good point as well, and within the application, and with discussions with the applicant, they have stated that the primary form of cannabis consumption is edibles. It's not smoking, but that being said, we do recognize that there's an issue with smoke if people choose to smoke. But again, because we don't have any precedents or anything to sort of work with, we thought, go the route of a temporary use permit rather than what the applicant had originally asked for, which is a rezoning, which is more permanent. So we thought we could mitigate the negative externalities through the temporary use permit, which is more regulated.
To me, that's really interesting, in terms of taking away the nuisance part. If there were other products that, if we were to pilot something, I would have a much greater comfort level with piloting something that didn't in the first pass include the smoking component,
Can I just
to be
add,
quite frank.
council that, sorry, when cannabis was legalized, did make a conscious decision not to have smoking, as that map shows, anywhere really in the public area. It would be on private properties only. So that was a conscious choice of council when they made that decision. In fact, I think we identified about 3 places in the whole downtown where you could actually meet the bylaw, and it wasn't out in the middle of the street, but it was before, the new development on Vernon here was an area you could, so there was very limited places. So that was a conscious decision of council at the time to limit the impact of smoking cannabis in the public realm.
Councillor Pinero.
Yeah, so one of the advantages of not talking until the end is that most of my questions just get answered.
Okay.
But I echo some of the things that have already been said. The temporary length of time of 3 years seems, interminable if it ends up not working for anyone. So I would say that I would also, if this were to go forward, I would support at least some sort of mechanism by which a check-in type of situation. Although from what I'm hearing, if there is any sort of problematic side effects of the business that do contravene bylaws, am I understanding it correct that would then negate the TUP automatically?
If they are found to not comply with one of the conditions of the TUP, city could take action, and then the use would have to be terminated immediately. And to your first point around a check-in, council does have the ability to put a condition within the TUP that directs staff to check in with the applicant at certain intervals, whether it's 6 months or a year or whatever it might be. So if that's council's wishes, that could be added to the list of conditions as well. And there's nothing within the Local Government Act that prevents us from bringing forward those discussions to council's attention if they wanted to.
Because just given the novel nature of it, it does seem reasonable to check in more often than if we were just dealing with a more tried and tested situation. So I think I would urge that if this goes forward, there would be that mechanism.
So just to
So you can make
clarify,
it
there's
up 1 year.
if you make it 1 year, then
Sure.
they have to reapply
Well,
versus checking in. So
there's no check-in mechanism is what you're saying.
well, I think Ken said
There's
could be,
2
but
options.
just- there are 2 different options.
You could do the 1 year, and then at the end of the 1 year, the check-in would be that the applicant would apply again for potentially up to 3 years. Or you could bake directly into the TUP conditions that they have to check in either with staff or council.
I would urge that function, it seems reasonable that
And with the neighbors.
just monitor the situation and maybe not have, if everything's great, then it's a continuation of it being great, and if it's not great, it needs to be fixed. The thing that I also heard in a lot of the feedback, sort of this equation of potentially, when I saw this originally, and not living next door or having much to do with marijuana culture at this point in my life, what I saw when I saw the application was that I just sort of pictured Oso Negro with pot smoke. I didn't picture what the first thing that came to my mind wasn't like a safe consumption site or a Brandy's Place situation. I'm assuming that my original feeling is more in line with what was intentioned. And I just don't know if that, if it's not the case, like if it is sort of a more, if it's a functioning restaurant and a functioning business and has a clientele and all these things, then I'm assuming that it also has to deal with WorkSafe and with FoodSafe and with all of the things that normal restaurants would have to deal with. And if not in compliance with those things, then obviously again, it's not a business if it doesn't comply with those things. Is that correct?
That is correct. So they have to operate a restaurant, and then the patio would be accessory to the restaurant. So if the restaurant stops operating, they stop serving food and beverages, the patio and the advertising would have to end.
And then the enforcement of those things are the responsibilities of those agencies, right? Like FoodSafe does its own thing, it's not the city.
Exactly, yeah, and that's a good point, and Interior Health did highlight, it is a restaurant, they'd have to have an operating permit from Interior Health. They'd have to comply with the WorkSafe BC requirements, that sort of thing. So there's other regulatory agencies that would be involved in watching this business, keeping an eye on this business.
So I guess lastly, it's not a big question to some people that might know this, but the thing that I can't quite get my head around is the smoke, which is in the air and therefore like hard to regulate. So and I recognize it as well. I think from what I remember from being a fairly terrible firefighter for many years was that air goes up during the day and down at night, not the other way around. But anyway, so during the day you're gonna drift up the hill, and at night you're gonna go down, and you're gonna be dealing with it on the street below. I'm wondering if there may exist, like if there's a component of this that's edibles and other things that don't produce smoke, and maybe a smaller portion of the business dedicated to smoking, or a smaller portion of that patio, could we not, is it not possible to put some sort of filtration or like vacuum system that actually puts it up in the air? Like have an intake by where people smoke and have it out of people's
That's
head.
definitely a possibility.
I mean, I don't know what the technicalities of that are, and maybe that's something for the proponent to figure out. But like, that's the only part of it that I can't, given the best case scenario or the benefit of the doubt or whatever. Like, it's just a restaurant, and it's just pot, and the people. I used to live across from Finley's, and I was up all night dealing with drunk people screaming and yelling and smashing each other in my yard. I mean, I don't think that's gonna happen from this best case scenario, but that's the part that I can't quite. I do recognize that people have neighbors and neighbors have kids, and that's something that I can't really get around. And so if there was some sort of mechanism to mitigate that or to find a better way forward to deal with that problem. I don't know what the realities of that are, but it's just an idea.
Yeah, in that particular case, I think we'd want to go back to the applicant and ask them if that's something that they would agree to before council moves forward with the decision. So that would be
It
it.
seems like a fairly mainstream concern from everybody around is just the ambient smoke and dealing with that sort of around, and so I would urge maybe that this isn't the time to make a decision, and maybe we go back to and just explore that option, or you know, we did some sort of, there was a housing development that we did a shadow analysis for. I'd never heard of a shadow analysis before that, but do some sort of smoke analysis and figure out where we have to pump it to make it work.
So Councillor Pinero, just in terms of, and council in general, in terms of time and the length of the docket that we have, I think everybody has had an opportunity to speak. But what I want to know from you is, are you wanting to refer this back to staff?
I think that angle is everything to me. If we could mitigate that one thing, then I'd be fine with it, and so maybe that is a thing to talk with staff and to talk with the proponent about.
Isn't there a motion on the table right now?
There's a motion on the floor,
On the floor, not the table.
and just walk me through the logistics again.
So you, Councillor Pinheiro, I'm assuming it would be you, could, well, you'd have to vote on this one that's on the table, which is to deny the temporary use permit. So take a vote on that, and if it is denied, if it majority votes in favor of this motion, then
anything can happen.
well, it's
Then the proponent can, you know what, the thing is that the proponent can always
Come
come back, right? So the proponent can always come back.
And the mayor has the authority to reconsider, for a motion to be reconsidered within 30 days.
Okay, well, that would be my urging, is that that's a thing that I think needs to be resolved, and if they could resolve it, then it becomes a very hard motion to deny, or a hard application to deny, sorry.
So the other option is making it a condition.
I don't know how you make, so that was my thing, is I don't know how you make clean air a condition.
Well,
Takes
An
more-
extraction process.
yeah, I mean, I have an air
But the
filter
motion
in
on
my
the
gym.
floor is to deny.
The motion on the floor is to deny.
I know, but do I need
So
to
then we wouldn't need to, like,
small?
at this point, it's
Yeah, you
deny,
don't
so.
But
I'm
the
just
motion
saying you
on the
don't need
floor.
to refer it if you wanna make it a condition, if this gets defeated.
Respectfully, I just don't know if making a condition, I don't know that technology exists, so I don't know if I wanna make a condition that requires the applicant to invent something
Well, I
that isn't
think
currently
the
on the market.
condition is there would be no smoke that would travel off the property or something, right? So how they do it, I don't think we need to get into the how, just what you're trying to achieve.
Councillor Payne.
Yeah, I just want to clarify a few things. So maybe I don't understand this, but what I heard was that if I'm sitting in a restaurant and then someone beside me goes outside to smoke cannabis and comes back in and sits down beside me, there's a negative effect to me? Is that what?
It's not what I said, if you were referring to what I commented on.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand.
My
it
comment
better.
is on that there is always this, I always hear from many people that you can drink, we've legalized drinking, so why can't we legalize smoking cannabis somewhere? All I'm saying is that a person that doesn't drink, I can go into a bar and I can sit next to a person having a drink and not become intoxicated by alcohol. If I sit on a patio where somebody decides to be smoking cannabis, I can be affected by the cannabis smoke. I'm not talking about running in and out the door.
Okay,
get
so
my
I thought it was
drink
a
and me
restaurant where people were sitting and then they went out to smoke. and then return to the restaurant to.
I'm pretty sure that you can take your food out onto the patio and eat there.
It's not super big, but that would be interesting. The other thing that I just wanna make sure that we understand is that this is a tourist opportunity for our town. There's a cannabis tourism, yes, it is a thing. So I don't know if the GNED has spoken about this yet, but if we're gonna be on the powder trail, we could also be on the, I don't know what name that would be, but I think it would be an interesting, as I say, I'm looking at our heritage and the continuation of something that we've always done differently, and I think we can do it safely, especially with knowing the proponents who have deep understanding of this area in a place that it's happened before. That's it for me.
Okay, councillors, if there's no other words, Councillor Lockenberg, I do see that you put, and I'm giving the last word to you because I'm going to call the question that we've been on this for an hour and we've got, I don't know how many things on the docket tonight.
Yeah, it was just a question. I wanted to clarify two things. The first is if somebody votes in opposition, they also, in addition to the mayor, have the opportunity to bring it back. Is that correct?
Your procedure bylaw, council's procedure bylaw leaves it up to the mayor to bring it back.
But we've also had, councillors bring back a motion.
You have to have voted in favor and then you can.
Yeah.
And if you wanna change your mind or opposite.
Unless you vote in opposition.
Right, in the opposition,
Yeah.
You vote
So
not
just again,
So if you vote in favor of
denial.
whatever's on the table, and then you want reconsideration, then yes.
you could bring it back.
Yes.
As long as
Okay, thank you.
acted upon.
I'm just waiting, I'm just waiting for Sarah to take a quick look, because this gets a little bit,
Double negative-y.
yeah, it gets a bit convoluted in
There's a
terms of.
time frame.
But there is a time frame. There's a,
It's 30 days, for sure. I know.
there is,
Right, it's the next meeting.
well, no, with 3 days, and then the meeting could be picked, doesn't have to necessarily come back, like, but there is a time frame to trigger the reconsideration.
Um,
Did you have that point? You were getting the last word, so make good use of it.
yeah, no, second question was regarding the ability to come back, so the proponent can come back with an additional modified temporary use permit request, correct?
I would imagine so. I don't know why that, he wants to know whether or not the proponent could come back at a later date with another proposal.
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so the voting to deny is the equivalent of referring to staff, because but it would be led by the proponent rather than staff.
Depends on whether or not the proponent decides that he wants to come back and try again, I guess, Councillor Lockenberg. To be in all
Yeah,
honesty.
I mean, yeah, I was just thinking it's better to be led by probably in this case, I would argue it's better to be led by the proponent, because maybe they, us putting some strange conditions on their would take up staff time and the proponent wouldn't be interested in anyways. So if we just vote to deny, then the proponent can make any adjustments and then come back, having heard this argument. That's all. Those are the only two things I had.
Nope.
They would just have to pay again, like pay the fee to have a temporary use permit considered again.
And the fee was $1,000.
I'm not sure. That's not.
The fee, if the fee is that much, I would amend my own motion to deny, and if the proponent did bring it back, to waive the fee.
Is the fee $1,000 for that? Yeah, it's
I
$1,000.
can second the amendment. Can I second the amendment?
So what is the amendment? Sorry.
To waive the fee if the proponent comes back with a new,
That doesn't fit with
it doesn't.
the motion on the floor, so you can't make an amendment. So you have to vote on the motion on the floor unless you.
Gotcha.
And then you can make a
Then we make
resolution.
another
Yeah, then you can make a resolution to that.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's the.
Okay, so You gotta give this a whirl. We have a motion on the floor to deny the temporary use permit. Does everybody have that? Okay. All those in favor of denying the temporary use permit indicate. So Rick, I'm assuming that you're,
We need to, can we see you, Councillor
can
Lochner?
you be on screen for a second at all?
I don't know how to do that.
AI, but you are at an AI conference, so I do worry about the capacity of that now.
Just put up an avatar.
But I'm here. Can you not see me?
No, we can just see RL. We just wanna kind of be able to see, just to confirm that it's you voting.
Yeah, sorry, my camera is showing me, so I'll turn it off and turn it on. Oh, Alex can see me. So
Well, that's really weird.
here, I'll turn it off and turn it back on.
Hand button then, just so that we know that you're really
This is
you.
a witness to
Oh,
this.
there we
Can
go.
you,
Oh. It's like,
can you see me now?
No,
Can you just tell us your
Nope.
Just say yes.
Yes, I say yes.
yes, you are in favor, okay,
Of denying.
of denying the temporary use. So he's in favor of the motion on the floor. 1, 2, 3, 4, that carries.
I'd like to be recorded.
As opposed?
Yep.
Anybody else prefer to be recorded as opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. So, Councillor Payne opposed.
I would like to move a motion to actually forgive the current application fee.
is that a motion of council?
The work has been done by our staff in terms of preparing this. I don't think that that's,
It's the motion I'm.
well, somebody has to second that motion. I don't know that that is an appropriate, motion.
I don't, not necessarily, but if, again, like I really see like the main issue being that one thing, if the proponent could do somehow something about that, and brought it back with that, could we then
So then the
waive the fee?
So then the better motion would be, the potential is that we waive a future fee as of rescinding the past fee, because I can tell you that staff did not
Yeah.
just AI this
Fair
and have
amount.
it in an hour. So
It's not
$1,000
jobs,
has
not the comment.
been spent.
Yeah, I agree, but if
Well, you need to
the
decide.
concerns are met and
Okay.
it comes again, can we not?
I think the first thing is to deal, Councillor Page wants to waive the current fee.
He wants to waive the current fee, needs a
Need
second.
a
It
second.
doesn't have a second, so.
Okay,
So
now
that
we
would,
can do this.
So I could say,
Yeah.
we waive no, never mind, what?
Because if you would have to bring back the motion for reconsideration. So your procedure bylaw says that a council member, other than the mayor, do not have the ability to initiate reconsideration of a motion, of a previously adopted resolution. Okay, rather councillors may rely on motions to rescind or amend previously adopted resolutions as provided in section 4.56 of your procedure bylaw. So what that means is you can either make a plea to the mayor and she can bring it back, or you can rescind that motion, which is to deny. And then you can put on the floor your motion to waive any future fees to reapply for a TUP. Like, there's no point putting, right now, it's been denied.
Yeah, I get it.
I think
That's what you're saying.
If I may,
future
He wants the future, for the future application that
fees on.
Yeah.
It sounds like for the future, we just deal with it in the future, right? Like,
No, I
they
think
have
we
to
can.
pay $1,000 before they get
Mhm.
it.
And you do have to
Yeah.
reapply, yes? Is that correct?
I'm not 100%
either.
sure, I was just looking at the local government act, definitely rezonings, there's a time period.
Yes.
So we can look into that. He can reapply eventually.
Eventually.
I'm just not sure if there's a time frame on that.
And so the only consideration that we're trying to have here is council would like to pass a motion
Okay, got it.
that if in 3 days or 3 months, he has the potential to reapply, and we're basically seeing all of this, plus what he's heard the conversation potentially ask for, and he comes back with an answer to that, that we wouldn't charge him, because of course, at that junction, staff wouldn't be spending hours generating the quality report that we have gotten here.
Okay.
That just raises so many questions for me. Would you have to repost the zoning change, and would there have to be a new public engagement and all of those dates? So that I have some questions, but it certainly does not address my concern, which is that there are no best practices, there are no precedents, and smoke or no smoke, I think that we need some more data from other jurisdictions first, so that we're not kicking the hornet's nest as we go along, and we're able to gather some information from other places first.
You require Canadian jurisdictions?
I think so, British Columbia I think would be best, but I hadn't teased it out that
I think
far.
that's restrictive to moving forward in a.
So I'm gonna ask council at this point that we have passed a motion, and I would like to move on with further business at this time. I realize there's some unanswered questions. I'm sure staff will be able to get back to us to define any terms. We have to see about what the length of time in terms of a reapplication is. But at this time, as of right at this moment, the temporary use permit request has been denied. So that is where,
Do we want to, if
Mayor-
not there yet, if the proponent should want to reapply within
I think staff will research.
staff has
Okay.
to research that and can have the discussion with the proponent,
Okay, perfect.
sorry, knowing that there could be some consideration that, you know,
Yeah.
what the cost might be.
Mm.
I think that's pretty, I think that message has been delivered quite clearly. So, okay, I wanna thank anybody, because I know a few people will stand up now to leave. Because there's always a few people that stand up to leave. But anyways, I wanna thank those that have come, and I hope everybody has realized that these are not easily considered motions for zoning, especially something new.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for attending tonight. Thank you. Okay, wow. Here we go. The next request is, let's look at what we're not gonna get to. Is 10B, Sue Big Oil. Sue Big Oil, West Kootenai, has requested that the city of Nelson pledge $11,500, which is approximately $1 per resident, towards legal fees in support of a class action lawsuit against major fossil fuel companies. Council must consider whether this expenditure aligns with the city's municipal priorities, financial capacity, and sustainability objectives. Council is now being asked to make a resolution regarding the funding request from Sue Big Oil. So, we have a recommendation,
Mayor-
we have options and alternatives, and I know Councilor Lockenberg probably wants to jump in on this right away.
Yeah, I'd like to move the a motion to proceed with suing Big Oil.
So,
Like, Councilor Lockenberg.
Sorry, I'll say it properly. If you give me a second.
Options and alternatives?
Yeah, sorry. So the alternative is that council approves the request to allocate $11,500 to support the Sue Big Oil class action lawsuit, contingent on A, other BC municipalities collectively raising a minimum funding threshold, and B, that a lead municipality to advance this action, and C, importantly, no further funds will be requested from the city.
Thank you, Councilor Lockenberg. Councilors, is there a seconder? Councilor Payne seconds that.
The B needs work,
Yeah, the B, it's missing a word. I think we'll all,
like other,
Yeah.
another municipality.
that another?
well, it doesn't just read quite correctly. It's like it's missing a word. But we get the point of the motion. So it's been moved and seconded. council now. Really, this is a council decision. We do have some reports from staff. I'm pretty sure that over the time, you've all heard from the community and proponents on this. Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
Councillor Lockenberg, you moved it, you get to go first.
Thank you. So, as I said, I'd like to first mention a few things in the report, just a bit of clarification. That the staff did recommend not approving or going forward with this litigation, and the fundamental rationale for the staff recommendation, I think, boils down to this line here: the absence of a clearly defined legal claim and the possibility of incurring additional legal costs if specific remedies are sought must be weighed against the intended symbolic and collaborative value of joining this campaign. So there's three things in there that I just want to clarify. First, is the legal claim clearly defined? The answer to that is maybe, maybe not. But the legal rationale is very clearly defined, and that is that the companies lied. This lie led to direct harm. This lie continues to cause harm to the corporation of the City of Nelson and to Nelson residents. And the municipal purpose in this case is very clear, that we need to recover costs. And further, we engage in all sorts of activities related to protecting our financial interests and the well-being of our residents, including going to the Supreme Court to defend carbon pricing like we did in 2020. Essentially, we need the money, and this is one avenue to secure it. The second thing is there's the statement about the possibility of incurring additional legal costs. Well, that's covered by this resolution itself. We've made it very clear that we're going forward with this if there are no additional legal costs. So that part shouldn't be included. There is no additional legal costs involved here. It's in the motion. There will be no additional legal costs. The third thing is that this is not symbolic. There are ample examples of these lawsuits succeeding and bringing direct benefit to the litigants. We have a clear rationale to move forward with it, and there is a direct benefit to us, so it's not symbolic. But if I may, I just want to establish some clear shared premises for this. And the first is that climate change is real. It's caused by burning fossil fuels. The fossil fuel companies admit to this fact. In fact, they have active climate change adaptation plans. Their own climate modeling shows that climate change has direct harm to their own businesses, and they're spending money to mitigate that harm. We also know that while we're all responsible for climate change, some are more responsible than others. And in this principle of proportional liability, the fossil fuel companies share an overwhelming burden here. And the reason is that climate change was not a political issue for the late 80s and early 90s. It had an overwhelming majority of the public that accepted that climate change was real. Margaret Thatcher, George H.W. Bush, Brian Mulroney, they were all advocates for strong action on climate change. So what happened? And what happened is that in the 90s, there was an active disinformation campaign that was funded by these large fossil fuel companies, including Exxon. And you could see the transition of public support. An overwhelming majority of the public had accepted that it was real. And then that switched over the course of the 90s and early 2000s. In fact, the dominant action that the world was taking, the Kyoto Protocol, was undermined by this disinformation campaign. So a campaign that was funded by the major fossil fuel companies undermining the Kyoto Protocol led to decades of inaction. And this same misinformation continues to undermine our climate action. Both Evie and Carney said that they canceled the carbon tax, not because it wasn't working or it wasn't helping, but because the public had turned against the carbon tax, and had turned against the reality of climate change, and so it made it politically untenable. That's directly related to this disinformation that was nurtured by these companies. Now, Exxon's profits were $83 billion last year, and that money will in a large part go to fund further fossil fuel development. And so given that the cost of climate change is very real, it's very high, the city of Nelson bears that cost, our residents bear that cost. This is maybe our best chance to recover some of that cost and certainly stop further disinformation from taking hold. So I strongly will be voting yes.
Well, I hope you actually are really wanting to vote for, because the resolution we're debating is the one you just put on the floor, but.
Yeah.
Council approves it.
Other councillors?
Just as a point of clarification, can we just to go through this here, so other BC municipalities collectively raising a minimum funding threshold, so that's saying that if we vote in the positive for this, that we won't give funds until.
We would be waiting until they meet the threshold, which I believe is
500,000. And that that a lead municipality advances the action. What does that mean?
Yes, well, what happens here is currently there needs to be a lead plaintiff. There has to be somebody that's got their name on the,
Let's just say.
the BC government sues opioid company.
Okay.
You have to have somebody that's the plaintiff.
Okay.
So a plaintiff has to come forward, and they actually would set the tone as to what the extent of the charge against the oil companies would be.
Okay, and then C, no further funds will be requested from cities, so that's it, the 11,005 is it. So basically what we're doing here is we're lending our name, Nelson, to this file, and then we'll see where it goes. And then we'll have to, once these parameters are met, then we would give 11,500. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. From all of my reading, that is correct. And I'm sitting here with a table full of letters that I have received. I would say you've defined what the ask is correctly and what the.
So primarily what this alternative here is just, we're basically giving our name to this, like we've done before. I mean, we have signed or written letters, or we've used our sway, I guess, in other instances. So this would be similar. We're just.
Although you are, if they meet these conditions, you are agreeing to fund 11,500.
So just as a supplemental, on the flip side, let's say it goes ahead. From all the reading I did, I mean, it does open us up to some risks. And in terms of being countersued, or
So.
is that correct?
Well, we don't have a lawyer in the room, but, and I am no lawyer. So one of the things here that will be repeated, and I'm sure Councillor Lockenberg, who's, probably looked at it 1,000 times, is that the process of going through this, in British Columbia, one of the other reasons to try to get this certified here. So let's be clear, this is not, we aren't actually suing anybody right now. This 500 million.
500,000.
500,000 needs to, my apologies to everybody, needs to be raised so that it can go forward to the Supreme Court, in this case British Columbia, to ask whether or not this can be certified as a class action. There is no action here right now until somebody determines that it's a class. So this money is being used to build the legal team, do the legal work, to get it to whether or not it's accepted or not accepted. Now, if the Supreme Court were to decide that this doesn't stand the test of becoming a class action, they can think whatever they want. They could think it was a vexatious waste of court time or whatever they want to think about it. In British Columbia, those pursuing class action are protected against being, wouldn't be sued, but we don't have to contribute anything to the legal costs. So if it failed at the Supreme Court, we would have probably spent our $11,500, but there would be no other costs. And there is no risk of future litigation. I just need to make that really clear. We're not exposing ourselves to a raft of litigation, because that is not allowed in British Columbia.
And one final point of clarification of mine is, there are many fossil fuel companies. Some big, some small. What is that?
A little map of,
Oh, a
I wanna
fossil
know
fuel
who we're
company.
suing.
That's right.
But
So my question would be, you know, are you
these are pretty
suing,
big.
are you suing every single fossil fuel company? Or are you suing
That
10
would
fossil
be-
fuel companies?
That would be up to the lead proponent.
Yeah, and so when the plaintiff, the lead proponent could decide that based on whatever happened, that they might just wanna sue one of big oil, right? There has been opinion pieces written that to look at probably suing the 5 biggest. There's been, and of those, I don't think there's a Canadian one that fits in probably the top 5, but to also look at suing the biggest Canadian oil company, which would be Suncor.
Thank you for the clarification. Councilor Lautenberg's hand is up.
Councillor Lockenberg.
I was just gonna provide a clarification. We know which companies actively funded misinformation, including ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, BP. None of them that I know of are Canadian. And that's what you would do. You would go after who actively funded misinformation or disinformation.
Yeah.
Knowing the truth, they funded, actively sought to undermine that truth for their own interest.
And just so you know, Councillor Lockenberg, I didn't make up the Suncor. I've read a legal opinion of note regarding this litigation that's been moved forward through the municipal councils. Is that that's a potential. It's not a necessary.
Right, okay.
It is a potential. So that was from a legal opinion. But yes, it seems like it's the big buttons. That would be Chevron, Saudi Aramco, ExxonMobil, Shell.
Double-digit billions.
But again, it could be 1 or it could be 2 or it could be multiples. Councilor Pinero.
Sure. I'm gonna have trouble articulating this.
Give it a whirl.
It's gonna be interesting, because I think a lot of my resistance to this is based on sort of like little cognitive dissonance things that don't add up for me, and there's quite a few of them, and I find myself kind of like kicking back because I'm constantly doing the math and it's not working out. And then at the same time, I don't know how much it matters. So that disclaimer, I'll get into my cognitive dissonance and then I'll sort of come around to it. But like, when we say that in the motion, there's like guaranteed to be no additional costs, I think that, is it $500,000? Like, I know people, I think I've said this to a couple people, I know people who've gotten divorced and it costs more than $500,000. So suing the biggest oil companies on earth will definitely cost more than $500,000, and it has to come from somewhere. And whereas we've decided, can we really decide as members of this lawsuit, if it is to go forward, we get that $500,000 and it goes forward, can we really decide not to help out any more than that? Or as a member of the lawsuit, are you required to participate in the lawsuit? Because it is just a symbolic amount and it is just our name. So that's the first one that kind of like
So
clicks
just-
for me.
Just on that one, I think they would seek a firm that would sue and get a percentage of whatever the settlement was versus paying them. That's pretty common.
Right. But if
But eventually, the law firms have to get paid eventually.
somebody's gonna have to get paid,
Yeah.
yeah.
But from the proceeds of the
Uh-huh.
settlement.
I see.
They don't win, they don't.
So we can actually guarantee
If you can
that
find
this- we
someone
can
that will-
guarantee to people that this actually is not gonna cost more than $11,500.
You can say unless, they would need to find a legal firm that was willing to take this on a contingency basis, maybe and that does happen, and so that's really your message here is we're not willing to fund a legal action past this. We're willing to see if we can get it certified, and then they need to find a proponent that's gonna take this forward and a legal firm that's willing to take this on.
And it's not to say that they never come back to ask you for any money, but I mean, at this point, we aren't committing any more money. And the other thing that you need, again, I am not a lawyer, so I don't want the world quoting me on all of this, but in my understanding of talking to my legal friends and all of the myriad of notes I have here from West Coast environmental law, the other thing that I do know is that this is a class action. And if it is started by municipalities, we are in the class. And once certified, you can ask to be removed, but you can't ask to go back in. So the class of people that would be suing, because we're doing this at a municipal level versus a provincial level or whatever level, or regional districts all getting together to sue, we are part of the class. It's like blacks versus whites, and if you're black, you're in until such time as you say you don't wanna be in.
So with or without our $11,500, we're in.
We're in, yeah, yes. If it gets certified, we are in,
Okay.
once it's certified.
My other things are definitely my personal things, so bear with me, but I think the reason I bring them up is not because I love to talk about my personal feelings, but just because I try to represent people as best I can, and while there's many people in the room here and there's many people that have sent letters, there's also many people that aren't here and have made their views felt about other things. One of them being that it was, part of the public engagement that we just recently did was that one of the main things was that people don't want us to undertake, it was worded sort of less performances or less performative action and more concrete action to benefit this community. And while I don't necessarily agree that suing Big Oil is necessarily would be a performative action, I can understand why people would feel that way, especially given the amount of unknowns. Like, we don't know if this is gonna happen, we don't know how the money will arrive, we don't know which fund it would go into or how it would be dispersed. There's a lot of things that are unknown, and the process of the legal system is painfully slow, and I imagine if you are a giant you have the means to slow it down even further. So I see that, and I'm sensitive to what people have asked of us, which is that we focus on tangible things that we can actually, that are sort of in our arm's reach. And again, that's just a first reaction. And then I think finally I would say that, like, while the lawsuit is against oil companies for false advertising essentially, I don't know that if they had told the truth, it would have changed anybody's habits, because from my understanding, the first world is responsible for climate change by and large, and our consumption and our habits and our need to have 2.5 cars and a swimming pool and all these things, that's why the world is so messed up. And we didn't, we quite happily consumed for all these years as a culture, as basically the global north, and at the expense of people living in the third world, and they're the ones that are suffering. And so, sue Big Oil, the global south could very well just collectively sue us. I mean, we are the problem and our habits are the problem. And I don't know that, you know, we were tricked, I think, into having 2 cars or you know, golfing. I think we wanted to do those things. It's a little bit, the dissonance there doesn't go away from me. I'm aware that the consumption is the issue, and whatever you consume at that unsustainable rate is going to be problematic, whether it's electric batteries or whatever. There's finite resources in the world, and we don't seem to have that wired in. So today it's big oil, tomorrow it's the mining industry, and you know, and it can go forever. And I'll just shut up soon, but I think that I'm not sure that all of that cognitive dissonance matters, because at the end of the day, it's $11,500, and you know, it's not that big a deal. So I have all of that kind of like reaction, but at the same time, I do recognize that big things happen from small places, and so maybe this is worth it. I'm not quite decided. I'm interested to hear other people's points of view.
Councillor Page, you're next. And then Councillor Lockenberg, I'll come back to you, okay? Because I just want to hear from Council, and I want to avoid the chance that we're debating or trying to negate each other's points of view, but I will come back to you. So I do see your hand up. I'm going to Councillor Page.
Yeah, thanks for that, and thank you, Councillor Lautenberg, for your clear words. I've struggled with this one as well, understanding our place in it, and I've gotten some sense of security from the mayor's words in terms of how far we might be tied up to this at this junction. I think what is clear, whether it's been the opioid crisis, whether it's been the smoking, the nicotine and smoking industry crisis, or the fossil fuel industry, it is about holding companies accountable for how they have influenced the public through their public relation efforts. I think it is clear that there has been an effort concertedly through our adult lives to mask the truth of the matter. And I think at this junction, I think this is a place that we actually start to push back, and I think we give our oomph and our name, as you were saying, Jesse, towards an effort such as this. I think the most sacred thing we can do as a society when we're trying to make decisions is the protection of some semblance of truth, and in these days that is getting more and more tenuous, and I think we do need to push back. So I will be voting in favor of this.
Okay, Councillor Lockenberg, so you took your hand down. Maybe you didn't really have it up, but I'll wait and see if it pops up again. I'm going to Councillor Payne.
Yeah, I'm gonna add to the protection of truth as the protection of future generations. And I agree, this may not be in our purview, but I do see municipalities all over the world leading on climate where other levels of government seem to fear to tread. So if adding our name to this, if $1 per person for the city of Nelson has a small chance of delivering a level of justice and equity for the, in my opinion, and we'll find out what the court's opinion is many years down the road, criminal activities of these major corporations, then I am all in.
Councillor Lockenberg, I saw it go up and it's gone down again.
Yeah,
You're
I
next.
was just gonna say, I took my hand down because I couldn't improve upon the words of Councillor Page and Councillor Payne.
Oh, okay, great.
Call the question.
No, I just want to speak because people just need to know that, so thank you for the cognitive dissonance. For me, I struggle with as I look at all of this, and trust me, I have the Arbe Finlayson, and Joe Arbe, I had the pleasure of getting to actually know Joe Arbe, who did the original writing back in the late, I don't know, he probably started this, well, the first time it came to council, he was already starting to work on this, and it came to council. My documents here are back in 2017, this was before council at that point, and Joe Arbe he's since deceased, great constitutional lawyer, and probably could get billions if we still had him out there in the world, but I still have this cognitive dissonance, as Councillor Pinero refers to it, because for me, there's far too many unanswered questions, and I think there's a time for a motion like this to come back to council to contemplate. And you've heard me say all these things before, and I got a nice letter from the West Coast Environmental Law the last time I spoke. I will assume that I will by next week have another nice letter from the West Coast Environmental Law telling me all the things that I had wrong. But even when I look at this, most of the things that I have mentioned in the past is you are correct. The dollar is to certify. The funds won't be spent until they're needed. The distribution of damages, nobody knows. And so because I don't have any answers to those questions, and I'm really grounded in trying to have information that I can put forward, I will be voting against. It's not that the idea is bad, but I will be voting against because I cannot come to terms with spending this money, or we're not even spending it now, is holding on to this money for I don't know how long. So I've had all my reasons before about this, but I did go yesterday and I looked up about other class action suits, and I just want to say this to the group. So, and my other question is, why isn't the BC government leading on this suing? Because they've been very effective in suing big everybody. So, sue big tobacco. The initial legal action started in 1998. And as of a few months ago, it's finally been settled. So the BC government's gonna get $3.7 billion because they represented governments, and as part of the class action, the money they got goes now across all provinces, unless a province, when they went forward, asked to be withdrawn. And I think there was one province in British Columbia that asked, once the class action was certified, not to go ahead. So they're gonna get $3.7 billion over 18 years. When you divide that up, it's not a lot of money. When you think about something like Abbotsford alone and the crisis that happened there with the flooding after the atmospheric river went through, I mean, their costs alone are probably $1 billion to remediate there. That took 28 years. And to think that the settlement is now gonna get paid out over another 18 years will make this almost a 50-year project. The class action against the opioid manufacturers has moved a little bit quicker. That was launched in 2018 by the provincial government. It was finally certified in January of this year. Now the battle starts. So we don't know what the money's gonna be. We don't know where it's gonna go. If you read the documents on the success or not success, however you might look at it, of the opioids being sued in the United States, there is still controversy about where the money is and where the money's gone. So again, it's this, once you get the money, how do you equitably, we hear a lot about equity around this table, distribute that? Does it go to Abbotsford, who has had a catastrophic thing? Does it go to Lytton, where the town burned down? And is Nelson, because we're kind-hearted and good people, say, we believe that's where it should go to, and we haven't had any catastrophic events, so we think the money distribution is equitable, going to those that have had issues. So for me, it's the time of these things. I can pretty much guarantee that I will not be on this earth, not that I should be here. But by the time we get through suing big oil, it's gonna be, I think, quite a number of years further. So I'm keeping in mind that I am committing future councils to this money. So then that raises the point in my mind, is that if it's still 10 years off, our population could be 16,000 or 17,000. And would at that time it be better to give 16 or 17,000? This motion has 11.5, and that's fine. And I know that it's gonna move forward, but I just need people to know that this has not been easy for me. It's not that I'm a climate change denier, but I'm just not too sure whether this is the best expenditure, and would this be better used doing something substantive right now in our community versus this. So I've had my say. So I did hear somebody want to call the question unless somebody else had a comment.
I have a question.
Okay.
For our corporate officer, could a future mayor bring back the resolution for reconsideration?
30 days.
30 days.
Oh, you only have
Okay,
30
you
days
only-
for that. Oh,
It has to be
interesting,
within
right,
30
I heard you
days.
say that before. I will comment though, because I also did a ton of reading, as we all have, and talked to a lot of people, and I really appreciated the meeting that I had with a couple of women who I respect very much from the West Kootenay Climate Hub. I appreciated their time very much. Thinking about my kids and my grandkids, climate change is real. The thing about this one is that it doesn't reduce pollution. It's not doing a thing, and so it's really tough for me. It does feel like a little green flag. Sometimes, you know, carrying a green flag is a good thing. I struggle with the action needed now and how we can only really be local. And one of my philosophies of sitting here at this table is that parable of the guy walking down the beach throwing the sand dollars in, right? Like, I'm just making a difference to that one. It doesn't matter about all the other beaches. We only have one planet. I find this one really tough. It does not feel like it's making a change that we need to make. It's not strong-arming big oil. It's not asking the federal government to regulate. It's not, as my good friend Councillor Pinheiro has told me, you know, we're still building cars. Whether we're building electric cars or gasoline cars, we're still consuming. And so I am struggling with this one greatly. I appreciate my people around the table.
Okay, the question has been called. We have Councillor Lockenberg for one last time.
If you don't mind, because since some people are on the fence, maybe there's a possibility of nudging. I was just gonna offer this one counterpoint, which is that there was a movement to do a lot of action in the 90s, international collaboration. We had succeeded on the Montreal Protocol, which dramatically reduced CFCs and effectively saved the ozone layer. There was an ozone hole in the, and so international action did work. The difference between, one of the big differences between the action on reducing or saving the ozone layer and GHGs was the ozone layer didn't have a disinformation campaign against it. In the stretch where there was collective agreement that climate change was real, there was investment in energy and in solar, in wind, in EVs, and there was a movement towards decarbonizing the economy. And that really ground to a halt in many ways, directly as a result of the lack of ratification of the Kyoto Protocol. If the Kyoto Protocol had been ratified by United States and eventually Canada even, then we would have had significant forward momentum. That stalled out heavily in the late 90s and early 2000s. So this disinformation did make a difference. And so I just want to say that there is a direct cost. It did make a difference. We would have been in a much better place today if not for the campaigns of Exxon and Chevron and Shell.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Lockenberg, and thank you for being online, just so that people in the room, there's quite a number of supporters of the Sue Big Oil campaign here. Councillor that you can't see, Councillor Lockenberg is staying up late into the evening to join us because he's in the back east, so thank you for being with us here tonight. So the motion's on the floor.
Can I
Yes.
offer an amendment that I think someone can second or nobody can second, it's totally fine. I have a curiosity about putting a timeline on this. Like if it doesn't get certified by X date, then whatever date you're at, then that council has an opportunity to make the determination. If there's a seconder and a wordsmither, curious? Maybe not.
Are you saying like a sunset clause?
Yeah, that sounds like what,
That sounds.
Is that what you're saying?
you know, like if the next 5 years that certification hasn't taken place.
So by, let's just throwing it out there, if you're saying like by 2030, if no progress has been made on this, then
It's not certified.
If it's not,
if it's not
It's not
certified by
certified.
2030, then
there could be something better and bigger and more effective by then, is my thought.
Yeah,
Lockenberg is your motion?
No,
I'll wordsmith and second it
Okay,
a little bit, which is that if it's not certified by 2030, that staff bring it back for debate. Because I think the danger is that we kind of forget about it. But if it's brought back on a date, like an alarm clock, then the council of the day can decide whether to continue to move ahead or let it go. It would be much easier to say no if it's staff brings it and they say, well, there's not progress being made, so do you want to keep going or not? Likely the council would say no, but at least they'd have the chance to evaluate it. So I would, if that's okay, I would second that amendment.
We just
That-
change consideration to reconsideration.
yeah, okay. So I think that we've got it here, but in terms of the wording, we have to have it reconsideration in 2030.
okay.
yes.
So we're putting a sunset clause on the vote.
So you're by 20, if it's not certified by 2030, it's brought back for reconsideration. It doesn't end, but a council at that date can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that's fair enough.
that's fair.
We're getting nodding heads here, Councillor Lockenberg, Councillor Tate, so now
Let's vote on the
we have to vote on the amendment.
Yeah.
So is everybody in favor of the amendment? Okay, and that carries.
Resolution here.
And then the resolution,
Number 2,
No, as amended.
as amended.
as amended, yeah. And so that is the approving the request, so all those in favor? And that carries. Okay? And now, the rest of the room is gonna leave. So, anyways, it was nice having you here this evening.
Thank you.
The tax rate bylaw is next.
Yeah, don't you want to stay?
Okay, so we have no delegations and bylaws. Bylaw 12A, the annual tax rate. Each year, City Council approves a 5-year financial plan, which establishes the annual budget and priorities. An annual tax rate bylaw is also required in order to collect the appropriate funds to finance these activities. The annual tax rate bylaw number 3640, 2025 is presented for adoption. And
Move.
so we've been through all this, so Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Payne, was that your hand going up?
Yep, this is for final adoption, so shall I read it?
Yes, please.
Thank you. That the Corporation of the City of Nelson's annual tax rate bylaw number 3640, 2025 be finally adopted.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. This is like hot off the press. I need to sign you had it to sign this so it can go away because we're on the short end of the timeline. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you again to the great work done by staff and the finance team to get this annual tax rate bylaw completed and passed. So, and I'm gonna sign this off, hand it to you, and then it's getting faxed somewhere in the middle of the night, I think.
Oh.
We have like
Okay.
8 days or something.
Oh, okay. So, because I was told, you sign it as soon as it gets passed, so here I am. Bylaw 12B, staff propose establishing a local area service, LAS, for infrastructure improvements at 85 Baker Street under the provision of the community charter. This bylaw ensures that 100% of the project costs, including interest, are recovered from the benefiting property owners. Council is requested to adopt 85 Baker Street local area service establishing bylaw 3639, 2025.
Move.
Moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Page, Councillor Woodward.
The Corporation of the City of Nelson's 85 Baker Street Local Area Service Establishment Bylaw, number 3639, 2025 be finally adopted.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. And is there any discussion? Seeing none. And that, sorry, you're gonna have to listen to me because we need to add a little second part to 12B. And that council directs staff to amend the 2025-2029 five-year financial plan to include the capital expenditures, proceeds of borrowing, corresponding debt payment, and additional revenue from taxation.
Sorry, you went to see?
No, so that's part of this one in terms that we have to do a financial plan amendment. Just to get in our part of what we're doing in the local area service. Perhaps staff is.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
normally bring back something every year that this just sort of formalizes that decision, that at some point later in the year, I'll probably package a few of these things together and you'll see that as one of those financial plan amendments, but this would be one of those components of it. This helps us track those a
So
little
is
bit
this
better.
all part of that one resolution or is it?
No, it's a second,
It's a second part,
resolution?
yeah, second resolution.
It's a second agenda item, no?
No, there's
So we're still on the
Fees.
It's still part of regarding the local service establishing bylaw.
So you
So,
need a,
do you need a move?
seconder for that?
So yes, so I need it moved.
Moved.
Thank you, I
Did
need
we
a
vote for the
seconder.
last one
Well,
or?
we didn't vote on the last one.
Oh, I thought we did.
I did not hear it, but, okay.
Okay.
That's what I'm confused
let's-
about.
Oh,
Are
okay,
we
sorry,
gonna
I thought we
finish that
had it.
first
Okay.
before we go to
So
the next
I
thing, or
moved
is
it.
this included
Yeah,
somehow?
you moved it,
Page seconded,
seconded, and then you read it.
then I read it.
Sorry, I thought I said all in favor? Okay, and that carries. So then now we're on to, we're on to the second part about the amendment to the 2025-29 financial plan.
So I'll move that.
I'm paying attention.
Sorry, moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Pinero I had. And so, all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Are you opposed?
That was a late favor.
Okay, a late favor. Okay, sorry about that, these little odds and sods, I have a whole addenda of things that I needed to add to today's meeting. And here we are at 12C, five-year financial plan, amendment the five-year financial plan bylaw 3602, 2024 for the years 2024 to 2028 was adopted by council on May 7th. 2024. Since adoption and during the year, several unanticipated expenditures arose and were brought to council for information with recommendations from staff. The financial plan amendment would be forthcoming. Council is now being asked to adopt the five-year financial plan of 2024-2028 amendment bylaw number 3642-2025. Moved by Councillor Page.
Second.
Second by Councillor Woodward. Councillor Page.
That the five-year financial plan 2024 to 2028 amendment bylaw number 3642-2025 be finally adopted.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. Did you want to speak to it?
No, I think it's the same one we brought up last time,
Yeah.
just adopted.
Okay, all those in favor? Good, and that carries. Super duper, that's 12. Now we're on to 13 and there's a whole raft of them. Okay, official community plan OCP update. Hi Alex, you're still with us. Hi Rick, we can actually see you now. Oh my
2
gosh, you
hours
guys,
later.
like, are you guys in the same city and you could go and have a beer after this
That's-
meeting's over?
Maybe, I don't know,
That's
Rick,
weird.
where are you?
I'm in Toronto, but
Me too.
Alex, oh,
Toronto too.
so somehow you're controlling my camera.
I don't know, I turned on my camera and I saw you on the council screen, the council chamber screen, and appear right away, so, yeah.
So, okay.
Following
I
consultation.
saw you the whole time though.
Following consultation on the first draft of the updated OCP, a list of proposed changes were presented at the April 15th Committee of the Whole, where council requested revisions. Council is now requested to approve an amended list of changes to direct the preparation of a second draft, as well as to affirm that the consultation on the OCP update process has been sufficient pursuant to council's obligations under the Local Government Act. So there's quite a bit of information there. And so we have a recommendation We have two of them, so recommendation one, is there a mover?
Move.
Councillor Woodward,
Second.
seconded by Councillor Tate. Councillor Woodward.
Alright. That having referred the draft 2025 official community plan to the Sinaiaks, the Tanaha, and the Silix, BC Transit, Ministry of Transport, Transit, Interior Health, and School Board Number 8, Kootenay Lake, and the Regional District of Central Kootenay, conducted 3 rounds of community consultation and considered whether additional persons, organizations, and authorities should be consulted, including federal and provincial agencies. Council is satisfied that for the purpose of Section 475 of the Local Government Act, the appropriate persons, organizations, and authorities it considers will be affected have been provided appropriate consultation opportunities in advance of the public hearing. Do we have to vote on that, or is it all together?
No, we'll vote on that, and then we'll vote on the second one.
Okay.
So that's been moved and seconded. Council, did you have any questions? We do have staff still in the room, so we have Alex, and we still have Ken, and we still have Natalie. I think we've been through the OCP quite a few times, so.
I would like to make a comment.
Oh my goodness.
This is so cool. This is like not a strategic plan, but like this is like the big document that sets that direction. And I just
We've been on the team for 2
think
years.
it's so
2
cool.
years.
I know.
Yeah.
You just did such a good job. Thank you.
Really, we should,
Community.
these two here.
You guys did a great job
Alex.
too.
And Alex.
Alex
I know,
there,
and Alex.
there.
And then 3 of us, so.
Yeah, oh, sorry, you did a great job too.
No,
I'm super
I just sit
impressed.
around, I just like it.
I'm super impressed. I love it. It's great.
Ken and Natalie and Alex, of course, that they've done, like, it was a tremendous amount of work over a very long period of time, and yeah, it's
Many hands.
many hands.
And I'm gonna say that again at first and second reading.
Yeah, and we had a number of, let's not forget the volunteers who put their time in to come and review documents and to sit with us for this period of time. It's long commitments for volunteers to make, so.
Dozens of times.
So recommendation number 1 has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, and that carries. Recommendation number 2.
Move.
Second.
Okay, there we go. We know who those people were. So Councillor Woodward.
That council approve the attached list of changes as amended and direct staff to use it to prepare a second draft of the official community plan that will be submitted to council for first and second reading. Can I just ask a question? When we get this draft, will that be the final draft? I mean, it is a living.
Yeah, that's fine.
Council
That's
passes first and
second
second
reading.
reading, yes, it will be
Yeah.
the final.
So it's still a draft until we pass it into some kind of law.
But it is a living document which can be modified.
Always, well,
Anytime.
And has
Okay.
been.
as we continue to do it as we sit here,
Yes.
sort of.
Yeah.
But now we will be on work going forward until such time as we pass this document. I think it's very important for people to understand that if somebody came tomorrow and wanted to do something that required OCP, it would be the 2013 OCP. This document isn't live until it passes final
Final
reading.
reading, okay, thank you.
So, great, moving on, community to community.
Oh, wait a minute, we didn't,
Oh, wait, did
We
we
didn't
vote?
vote on number 2.
Okay, so we moved and seconded, and all those in favor? And that carries. Okay, you can tell I'm getting tired. What time is
Yeah.
it? 9 to 6, 6 minutes past my bedtime. So, moving on to 13B. The Union of BC Municipalities is currently accepting applications for the Regional Community to Community Program, C2C. This program funds initiatives that foster stronger relationships between the local government and local First Nations. To proceed with preparing an application, UBCM requires a council pass a resolution endorsing the city apply for this funding and confirm the willingness of elected officials and or senior staff to actively participate in the funded activities. So you've got a document there with information. And we have a recommendation. Mover, Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Woodward. Councillor Page.
That the council supports an application being submitted by the city of Nelson under the Union of British Columbia Municipalities 2025 Regional Community Program in the amount of $20,000 to initiate implementation of 2 C2C forums, 1 forum between the city of Nelson, the Sinaiaks Confederacy, Confederated Tribes of the Covell Reservation, and 1 forum between the city of Nelson and the Tanaha Nation and Yakinuki, and the city of Nelson confirms that the city of Nelson will participate in the 2 proposed C2C forums.
Councillor Payne, you have a question?
So is this the second year of the funding we received near the end of last year that got consolidated at the RD?
No, this is different.
This is a different
This is
thing. Perfect.
Just for,
Okay, thank you. It looks more
that was it.
specific. Oh, thank you, that's what I couldn't find.
Yeah.
Okay, looks good.
Okay,
I have a question.
question?
So it looked from the information package that the forums were for 10,000 and agreements and joint review of bylaws were 10,000, but in the motion, it looks like the two forums are 20,000. Just, I'm wanting to understand which bylaws we're looking at, actually. Thank you.
It's $10,000 per forum, for a total of 20,000.
Okay. And so what is agreements and joint review of bylaws policies up to a maximum of 10,000?
If we got into a situation where we're in regular contact with the nations, we could work together on a review of the OCP or the zoning bylaw or any other sort of bylaw of mutual interest. So we would then apply for that second category of funding.
So you're applying for the first category times 2.
That's right.
I get it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions, councillors? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you, Ken. Okay, topic, a bit, it's late at night to even say this. Thank you, planning department. So, topic, habitually persistent communications. This policy provides clear definitions, processes, and consequences related to individuals whose repeated communications disrupt the organization's operational efficiency and affect staff morale. Centralizing communications through a designated point of contact will minimize disruptions and ensure consistent responses.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Woodward. Councillor Page.
That the council adopt habitually persistent communication policy number as named, as presented.
Any questions or concerns to staff? Councillor Payne.
I'm just interested how significant time, yeah, I'm just curious, like, is it 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week
For
or?
the habitually persistent communicators
Yes.
and staff, it depends on how many staff members they decide to ask questions of that particular week. It's
Okay.
proven to be quite a significant.
I'm assuming it's like the rest of the things, the Pareto rule, that, you know, it's 20% of the individuals create 80% of the
There's a very small.
challenging
Yeah.
But
communications.
I mean, I just wanna be clear, like, they don't just ask questions over and over again, they do, but they also,
They cycle around, they do.
and they harass staff, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
really hard on staff.
Oh, that's why we
morale.
got harassing and bullying after that, okay.
So it would be maybe similar, sorry, Mayor,
It's Woodward.
thank you, Mayor. It would be similar to like somebody who's like really litigious, where they're you know, constant looking to sue, or like it's that constant I guess harassment is the right word, really.
Yeah.
It's harassment, they don't necessarily have to be litigious about it, but I mean, there's a whole process outlined in the policy about what constitutes a habitually persistent communicator.
I'm probably on the list.
I would be on the list if I wasn't sitting here.
Councillor Pinero.
I don't have an issue with this, I just wanna make sure that we are not, I mean, one of the things that would cause somebody to send the same email over and over and over again is if they feel that they're not being, that their concerns aren't being dealt with. And I've seen in my short time here, a whole lot of, I think, behavior that this is probably aimed at. And also I've seen people that have legitimate concerns that aren't being met, and then that causes them to be frustrated clearly. And I don't want a policy that, I don't want to encourage us to, just because you've said it twice doesn't mean we don't have to listen to you anymore, kind of thing. I don't think that that's the spirit of this, but I just, what's the like, we have to also look at ourselves and like, I know there's, you know, people have a bad interaction with somebody, maybe somebody's having a bad day on either side of this equation, and it can turn into something that looks on the face of it like this, but maybe isn't. And I just don't want us to lose our ability to take things as a case by case basis, because I think individuals deserve that treatment as individuals.
That's a fair comment, and part of the procedure or process of like identifying one of these people is to go through a process and speak with other directors, managers, whoever's been involved in a situation. And it generally would go to the city manager to review, who is very fair and will consider all aspects. Like, it's not just for the, oh yeah, you've had a bad day. It's not for that. It's for the person who continually goes around to multiple staff members with the same question, looking for the same, like for the answer that they want, right? Like it's, I know what you're saying, and it's, you know, one of the things that we really tried to be careful of when we wrote this was, we don't wanna prevent people from doing city business, like for doing the business of that they have to do with the city. So we don't wanna like handcuff people. And that is also part of the process where if they are seen as somebody who's persistent and all of their emails or correspondence or what communication goes to one person, that person then makes sure that you know, you're actually reading the correspondence, and if there is something that's city business or a question that needs to be answered, you're not overlooking it and just sticking it in. Like you're like, oh, okay, this needs to go to so-and-so and they need to answer properly.
That, as long as that's addressed, I'm fine. I just want that to be, you know, like there has to be some sort of mirror that's put up to us to make sure that we are addressing people's concerns and to the best of our ability.
And the other thing I think to keep in mind is that I think every citizen in Nelson, and anybody that well, it wouldn't just be Nelson because we have bills that go out to the regional district for hydro stuff, is there is always procedural fairness. And so that's kind of like the last stop, but that's something that you can evoke if you feel that you've been captured by this and that it's not true. So there is actually like another thing, and that is the procedure, do I have it named right? Procedural fairness, yeah. So that is a policy.
And then there's the ombudsperson.
And then there's ombudsman, yeah.
Mayor?
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you. I just want to say to Councillor Pinero that in the 6 years I've been here, it's really been a slow progress we've been making to try to have a kind of equity and fairness with both the community and city staff, and have safety, and we've built up many new policies to create that environment. And I would say, like, from when I started here to now, it's much more fulsome, and it's more actually it's more fine grained, to be honest. And we can actually respond in, I think, a much more of a detailed way than when I first got here, where the policies just kind of weren't there. And so I've really seen this building happening and a refinement in this in staff response. So I just want to if it eases your fears that it has been many years of building these good policies to protect everyone involved.
Yeah, that addresses my concern. I just don't want us to react to people that we all know that this is meant for, and then have that sort of blanket other people as well.
So we've been moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that carries. Hi, Rick. Thanks for putting up your hand. I was looking, he's looking pretty comfortable there.
It's midnight.
It's midnight, yeah. I know he's hanging on pretty good, because I'm fading. 13D, overall funding for Next Gen 911, NG 911 in the amount of 60 million was provided by the province of BC and is being administered by the Union of British Columbia Municipalities. Under the 2023 program, 36.4 million was allocated to eligible recipients, of which the City of Nelson received 3.5 million. Approximately 25 million is now available for the 2025 NG 911 program, with the City of Nelson applying for $715,490 of this fund. As part of the UBC grant program process, a council resolution is required to support the application. The grant funding covers 100% of eligible activities. So you've got your backgrounder there, and we have a recommendation moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Panero. Thank you, Councillor Woodward.
All right, whereas council supports next gen 9/11 mandate improvements to public safety with investments made in the city of Nelson's fire dispatch infrastructure and development of a more accurate and detailed GIS system. Therefore, be it resolved, the corporation of the city of Nelson be authorized to apply for a $715,490,000 grant as part of the application to the UBCM 2025 Next Gen 9/11 funding program, and further that the staff be responsible for the overall grant management.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions, councillors? Can't imagine any, but
Yeah.
there we go. All those in favor? And that carries.
Great.
Okay, moving on to 13E. Staff is seeking council approval for the interim urban forestry strategy 2025-26. The interim plan will allow staff to monitor successes and engage additional resources, including potential academic partnerships, and sets immediate priorities for managing Nelson's urban forest as vital green infrastructure while supporting climate resilience and biodiversity. It outlines actions such as piloting a tree trimming program, launching a tree protection bylaw, and initiating public engagement programs. Council approval will allow staff to begin implementation and preparation for a full urban forestry management plan by 2027. So lots of information there, and we have a recommendation moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Panero. Okay, Councillor Woodward.
That the council approve the city of Nelson's interim urban forest strategy 2025-2026 and direct staff to begin implementing the priority actions outlined within the strategy, and that staff continue the development of a full urban forestry management plan for council's consideration by 2027. That's next council. May I comment?
Sure, you moved it.
Thank you.
You need a second?
Oh, seconded.
Oh,
Oh, it was moved and seconded, so then you read it, yeah.
Sorry, you're right, Panero, yeah.
I just wanna say, I was super excited about this. I thought this was like a really wonderful, detailed way of like working, oh, here you are, of working with our urban forests. And I think, you know, much like the persistent communication policy, we're getting more refined as a city, and these policies are enabling us to actually make really good choices in a more refined way. So I just want to congratulate staff on this, and maybe you have some comments on it.
Yeah, it's a proactive management, it's really exciting, really fun project to be involved in.
Great.
If you're wondering.
That's awesome. Thank you very much for your work. I'm not sure if you.
Councillor Payne.
I am interested in the timeline. Is there, with the work that was done last summer by the student that was here, is there any way that it can be accelerated? Is there any benefit to the city of doing that? And is it just a matter of resources?
Yeah, we have a 3-year, it's a 3-year project with Simon Fraser University. And
Oh,
this
okay,
next
so that's why
year-
24 to 27.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then this
That
year
makes sense.
we're doing a GIS survey, so we're gonna do plugins all of our city-owned natural asset trees and map that out, and then that's using education, so Alice in academia to create this urban tree strategy in a forest form.
Okay, got it. Helps me understand it better. Thanks.
Councillor Tate.
So you're gonna be developing a tree protection bylaw, and there's also an adopted tree program, but those two things aren't necessarily connected except within this policy.
Yeah, adopt a tree would be, or you're electing yourself to take care of the tree. So is say our park staff plant a tree outside of your house, maybe the residents closest adjacent to it will water it instead of having parks water it. So that would let us plant more with less resources. And then the drafting of the tree protection bylaw is just ensuring that like significant trees, like heritage trees by species, by size, aren't so they have special status, so they'll get taken down by residents. They have special considerations when we're working with them around infrastructure, stuff like that.
Great, cool, thank you.
Councillor Payne.
So do we have to wait to 2027 to adopt a tree?
I think you can adopt a tree anytime.
I'll adopt the trees on my boulevard. If I adopt the tree, can I, like, one of the things I'm
Can I
interested in.
name it?
Huh?
Not developed yet.
No, one of the things I'm interested in is we have 2 mountain ash on our property. And one of them, had some sort of precarious branches, which I, let Public Works know about. And I know they have a lot of other things, but luckily the bus driver also let them know about it because he kept sort of crashing into it. So is that something that would be part of that program of just alerting the city to challenges that might be there? And then across the street from me, there's also a branch that broke that was gonna fall at some point in time. I just don't know what the procedure is on that.
That's all stuff that would be a service request, so if it's a tree on public property and it appears that there's a risk there, then yeah, that's just a service request, so call into Public Works and then,
So I should call in?
yep,
I should maybe put them on speed dial because by the time I walk past that tree and I'm 3 blocks down, I forgot that I was supposed to do it.
yeah, and I think a couple of, critical points in this that we wanted to really highlight. One is, this is about actively managing our urban forest. So forests require management, especially in an urban setting, in terms of, we do have, we've enjoyed these beautiful trees that we've had around, but as we are, faced with every time we walk into City Hall right now, we have these beautiful trees out front. The one close to the building is now dead, right? And so active management doesn't mean protecting, right? So we're trying to get away from the protecting at all costs and really trying to manage it. So we recognize that all of those trees are approximately the same age. We have an opportunity now because one died. We actually looked at it last year and noticed that they were dying. And so it's, the type of thing that we want to take advantage of where we can maybe take down a couple of those trees, get some planted, with anticipation that the others will have to go at the same time. And you're kind of diversifying your canopy. I think that's what that motion was.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, in doing that. But just the idea that, people getting a good understanding that your urban forest requires active management, not just blanket protection, don't cut anything. Because if you do that, then you might end up with a pathogen or, trees down an entire street might all sort of start dying at once and then that street is bare. But if we do some work to take some down in advance, plant them, then you have that diversity of species, diversity of age, that makes a big difference. So that's one of the points.
And I can't remember if it was mentioned, but I assume there's some fire smarting benefits from that as well.
Yep, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, and that speaks to as well, the trees that we plant here, they are not necessarily, indigenous to this area or native to this area. That what that looks like is we do have this diversity of color that comes through in Nelson that really makes it gives it the magic that everybody speaks about. But as well, they are fire resilient trees, in terms of they will not carry a fire as effectively as, say, lining every street with a whole bunch of conifers, right? So there's some advantages in that. One of the other main points that we wanted to bring up in this as well is just highlighting that Nelson Hydro does a lot of work. We have a lot of these above ground utilities and their approach to some of these trees. I mean, you can either go back every few years depending on the growing season and retrim, and that costs money and that keeps going. And of course there's some critical trees in our sort of downtown core where that's going to happen. But in other areas of the city, the tack is more to, okay, well, let's get a few trees in the ground adjacent to it, maybe on the other side of the road where the electrical utility is not running, plant them there, let them grow for a few years, and then let's just take out that tree that was there to allow, or so, to reduce that amount of reinvestment there. So you're still maintaining that coverage and in fact maybe improving it. But as well, we've had the odd time when a homeowner is really committed to a tree. So getting some direction that, we can say, okay, well, if you're really committed to that and you're willing to pay for the trimming, then, we can explore that. So that's one of the things that we wanted to enable in this and just highlight to council that we wanted to have the option to look at if there was a homeowner that said, no, I'm happy to pay for, the trimming cost for that every 3 years to keep that tree because it provides shade for the house, my kids love it, whatever it is, then we could start to explore that, so.
Further?
Do they need to pay us or can they hire an arborist?
They would pay us, it's our trees, our resources,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
And utility work.
So you have to be certified, which
Councillor Tate?
Okay, so that sounds different from some of the interactions I've heard about between Fortis and private tree owners. Where there is no give. It's like they can't be there, period, bye-bye trees. So I really appreciate the opportunity to do that, recognizing that ultimately, I think if the city gets too big or those kinds of things, it might be difficult to maintain that kind of a strategy.
Well, and I think we, as Chris said, looking at it as an interim, because
Right.
we will be planting trees that aren't in conflict with our utilities.
Right.
So we need some of those to grow up and
Yeah.
to be some more substantive trees, and this to me is an interim strategy while
Okay.
those other things happen.
And-
Because I
and to
think
be-
ultimately we want not to have the
Not to
conflict.
have tree
Yeah,
utility conflict
Yeah,
at all.
and to be abundantly clear, this is for the city of Nelson as well, not
Yeah.
the broader Nelson Hydro service
Oh, okay,
area.
Oh yeah,
interesting.
this isn't in the rural area.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions on that? Okay, seeing none, that's been moved and seconded. I think we moved and seconded it.
Yeah, sorry, I do
Yeah.
have one more question.
Yep.
How are we identifying the heritage trees?
I
Is
think
that being left up to Public Works or is that?
I think they're already identified in the
20.
CP or in the study.
In the
is it?
last study, I thought in the first study we did the heritage trees, yeah.
So there are areas like
Yep,
Mill
yep,
Street.
yep.
Yeah.
I just was wondering. It's come up a couple of times on the
Yeah.
Heritage Working Group and.
And again, and just to make the point abundantly clear, like those heritage corridors as well will require, management at some point, right? And so just to know that it's not, oh no, it's heritage is saying, it's like, well, we actually kind of want the overall look of that street to remain the same. So to do that, we might need to take some trees down in advance to replant such that, there's always some amount of canopy there that's, maintaining that.
I think the Heritage Working Group is cognizant of that. They just want to make sure that it's noted
Mhm.
before.
Mhm.
So, yeah, all good.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. No further questions, all in favor? Okay, and that
Thanks, Emily.
carries. So thanks Emily for coming tonight. I see the media stepped out, and here I was thinking there was just a lost soul in the back of the room. But I want to just recognize, because I didn't do it at the very beginning of the meeting, and I had asked Sarah to let the staff person know that we would maybe do this at the front end of our next meeting in May, but I would like to introduce Christina, if you don't mind coming up or standing up for a moment. Christina is our local government intern who is going to be joining us for the next year. So you will see her, and although I gave Sarah the heads up to tell her please tell her she can go home. We missed the introduction at the beginning of the evening, and she said, no, I want to stay and see how it works. So I think she's got a good sampler.
Yeah, she
So fun.
Oh, yeah.
So Christina, not to put you on the spot, but do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your studies and?
Yeah, sure. So I'm graduating from UBC Vancouver this year with a major in political science and sociology. I'm very, I don't really know what I want to do with my future. So when I found out about the LGMA program, I was very this is perfect for me to kind of get my foot in the door in local government and see how it works, learn about it. And I think it's so cool to be able to work in different departments with everything and just learn all the different parts of local government. So yeah, I'm very excited.
You're welcome.
And so are we.
Yeah.
And maybe just for a little bit more context, I was fortunate enough to work at the RDCK when we had an LGMA intern. So our responsibility as the folks that are receiving this fantastic resource and asset is to really expose her to all the goings on in the city. So you'll see her on a number of different files. So it's not like she's just being parked in one department or another. So she'll be involved everywhere. You might see her in meetings where she's coming in, and might wonder why she's there. And she's there because we're trying to give her the broadest exposure as possible.
Is she gonna be out working the line and
I would.
There might be some of that.
digging some trenches?
Yeah.
Liquid waste management, that's the one I'm
Yeah.
for.
And so, thank you for Christina. You can now, if you would like, you can, we're only doing, receiving for information, council, boards and commissions. So you're more than welcome to, go home now if you like, but welcome very much to the team. I think you've got a taste of, we might be small, but we're awfully mighty. And I think you've got a taste of just how complicated even a small town like Nelson can be in terms of its local government and its requirements, so.
All the same moving parts and a couple extra.
Yeah,
Yeah.
welcome to the team.
Thanks, guys. I'm super excited.
We'll see you around.
Yeah, see you.
Okay, moving on to, and before everybody starts packing up, we will be going back in camera. I will be asking for a resolution when we finish the information items. So we have 6 sets of information items in front of us. Is there anybody that wants to pull out one specifically or 2 to talk at independently? Or does somebody want to move receipt for information for items 1 through 6? Councillor Woodward.
I will move, and if there's somebody who wants to,
Sorry, there was something on the development services building permit statistics that I wanted to inquire about, but I did not write it down, and at this late date, I cannot find it, so I can just email about it.
yeah, okay. This is the minutes, right?
These are the information items. Nelson Housing Committee, Nelson Housing Greater, Nelson Economic Cultural Development, and the Nelson Public Library Board.
So I'll move that.
Okay, items 1 through 6 have been moved for information. Is there a seconder? Councillor Panero, all those in favor?
Pause, I don't think are we on?
We're on 14A.
14A, I didn't see the library one in there, did I miss it?
It's not,
It's number
yeah,
6.
it's number 6, the last one.
Nelson Housing Committee, GNED, Cultural Development Committee, and
Nelson Public Library.
I know, but I don't think it's actually in the PDF.
It's in the agenda.
Anybody else got the PDF?
Yeah, it's right here.
I think that the GNED is twice. That's all. After page 14, it goes Cultural Development Committee, and then it goes GNED again.
Get them separately, I didn't-
Oh, you're saying the public library minutes
not
are not
attached.
here? Is that what you're saying?
That is,
Oh,
really?
I have the hard copy, but
Hold on,
Receive it without library.
okay.
Okay,
triple check you.
so
Yeah.
move receipt 1 through 5.
Yeah.
All those in favor? And that carries. Okay. And we'll get 6 at the next meeting. And then moving on to information items. So we have quarterly purchasing, accounts payable for February and March, development services, building permit statistics, and UBCM resolutions memo. So items 1 through 5. Okay, those have been received for information, moved and seconder. Councillor Tate.
Can I just ask one question?
Just one.
The new reservoir tank. So that has not been built, but it's been contracted? Yes. How big is it going to be?
Volume?
Yeah. Like, is it gonna be, like, I know our current reservoir is actually quite shallow. Like, it has, it's bigger.
Oh, that'll stay, this is the finished water
I know,
tank.
I'm just
Yeah,
wondering,
yeah,
like,
I see.
is it, cause the reservoir is not very deep. So it holds a lot of water, but
Yeah.
it's not really, is this gonna be a deeper?
This is just to ensure that we have the amount of finished water for things like fire flow, and it gives us that level of resilience where, and when we say finished water, because when you treat water, you have to allow for contact time with the chlorine to actually do the work that it does. So this is finished water ready to go. In the event that we had a very large or multiple event fire, if you don't have the proper amount, then you end up drawing in water that hasn't had the contact time. And then you have to go through and chlorinate your system.
So how many,
We can get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, I just would be
Yeah,
curious to how
we
much
can
we'd
get
actually have. And in addition, is how much longer would that supply help us in a fire? I'd be curious to know.
Okay, we got you.
Okay, thank you.
And how long do you have to turn on the taps to pull all that water through before you stop them again so that it gets chlorinated? Flush. So
That's
many
why we have the
questions.
finished
Don't
thing,
answer
so we
that
don't
question.
have to
Oh
do
my
that.
God, you bring the water team in, we obviously have a water workshop.
Loving the
Yeah.
water team.
Double, the double
curious.
W.
Like somebody wants a tour.
Oh, I'd love
Been
to.
there, I've already been up there.
We went on a tour, didn't we?
Okay,
Okay,
so,
Tour.
we have no
Yep.
notice of motions. We dealt with, late
Oh,
item number.
We didn't pass it, we didn't vote on it.
pass the.
Oh, sorry, can we vote on we was moved and seconded, all those in favor of the,
Move sheet.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
And that carries. We have no notices of motions. We dealt with late item as we moved to item 6. And so I would like a resolution closing the meeting to the public. And it's the opinion of the council that the public interest requires that persons other than members of council and staff and approved audiences be excluded from this meeting, and that the meeting of council continue under section 91